Morning, dearest friends. It is Yud Beis Tishrei, the 12th of Tishrei, the second day of the 4 days that take us from Yom Kippur to Sukkot. It is, I can't believe I'm saying this, October 7th, 2022. And we're here to study the entire Talmud, one page, one line at a time. Right now, we're Masechah Shabbos, and it is Masechah Shabbos, the 19th chapter, Kuf Lamed Hey Amud Beis 135b. I just need a follow-up before we continue. The professor's not here, but we'll have to, hopefully the professor will join us. And I have to give him a big compliment. Let me just, hold on a second, Talmud. I have to give the professor a compliment. He's not here. But they say Miksat Shvachav. No, I would give him the praise in front of him. He asked a question yesterday, and it was real fast. He asked, isn't it ironic? I think it was the professor.
Yes.
We finished the whole day of atonement, and we really meant it seriously. And we said Hashem Elokim and Shema Yisrael, and we sounded the shofar. We really, really cleansed ourselves. We didn't step out of shul. There's no opportunity to sin. And we already say Slach Lanu, right? It was the professor. Slach Lanu ki chatanu. Hashem, forgive us for we sinned. If you believe that Yom Kippur is real, and if you believe that Yom Kippur works, then we should omit at least the first Ma'ariv, Slach Lanu ki chatanu. The guy who ditches Ma'ariv for the break fast, maybe they need to say Slach Lanu.
Yeah, but they didn't say it's right.
But the guy who's davening is the guy who stayed in shul. He's extending his fast out of devotion to Hashem. He's still staying plugged in. What does he need to do? Teshuvah. Why do we say Slach Lanu? Now, what is the question? What is the alternative? Are we proposing to actually delete Slach Lanu? I don't think that's the proposal. But if davening is not just a robotic activity, if it is actually something that is full of meaning and significance and it's real, I guess the question is, how does a person make sure that prayer is not disingenuous? How does a person make sure that the prayer is sincere? So I thought that was a brilliant question, and I threw some ideas, that I thought the professor's coming on. Hold on. Where is he? Oh, Professor, good morning. I was in the middle of complimenting you. I hope you can hear us. So, Professor, I was commenting on your question at the beginning of the shir for a specific reason. And so I was explaining your question about how do we daven with sincerity and realness and ask Hashem to atone for a sin if you think that you did a wholehearted teshuvah. So I thought it was a great question. I said whatever I said, but last night I was by a Fabreing in for someone's birthday, and I had with me a Dvar Malchus, which is those colorful booklets that they print every week with Gemara and Rambam and Chumash and Tehillim, and they also print excerpts from talks of the Rebbe. And so I was sitting there, and became quiet. I said, guys, we have to say something of substance. So I just flipped open to a page. I said, whatever we open, we'll learn something. I didn't want to just, I've been doing enough sermons, so I want to have a text grounded Torah. And so sure enough, what's the question? It's not a question, it's a story. And I just want to tell you the story. I don't know the clue to the story, but I know that it's connected to the professor's question. Again, I hope the professor hears. The previous Rebbe was a young man, and you can imagine he was the son of the Rebbe Rashab. He was the son of the Chabad Rebbe. The Rebbe Rashab was known as a very serious, intense, deep thinker, leader. But his main contribution, his two main contributions, was a very, very elaborate and deeply considered Hasidic teachings, and he founded the Chabad Yeshiva Tomchei Tmimim, which ended up providing most of the Rabbanim and Torah teachers during the Russian Revolution, the time that followed. And he somehow seems to, if you read his remarks, it was clear that he knew that tough times were, well, I guess Jews always knew tough times were coming, and he really instilled those Rabbanim to push the envelope of Mesiras Nefesh to preserve Yiddishkeit. But anyways, he was a very serious Rebbe, and you can imagine his son, the previous Rebbe, was growing up in this environment, was equally committed and intense and serious about Torah and mitzvot. And so the anecdote that I read as randomly opening up the book is the previous Rebbe approaches his father, the Rebbe Rashab, and he asks him the following: Yom Kippur is over. Was jetzt? What do we do now? We've been killing ourselves. Elul, Rosh Hashanah, Saras Tshuva, Yom Kippur. Now what? What's the next step? What do we do? And his father responded to him, Professor, you're listening? Jetzt darf man erst teshuvatan. Now we first have to start doing teshuvah. What that means is a heavy question, but I think it's exactly. I think it exactly projects to your question of what is the teshuvah of slach lano ki chatan. The answer, or whatever, we could figure out. I think the Rebbe explains something along the lines of what I said, that a person, as they're always growing, they always have to embrace their journey of coming closer to Hashem. We always have to realize that there's still more perfection that can be done. And the notion of teshuvah in the big sense is not just removing obstacles, but also moving closer. I guess that would be the thing. The way I explained it last night by the Fabring, and then we'll jump into the Gemara, is that, a person who is, let's say, a track runner. So they run and they try to beat their record. And then when they finally beat their record, and let's say they go to a marathon or whatever kind of thing, and they actually achieve, either they win the race or at the very least they beat their own record. So now what? If they don't set a new goal, they'll flounder. You always need to be challenging yourself, or in a business, you scale the business to a certain point, it's successful. At a certain point, when you feel like you've plateaued, you have to set a new goal. And so probably the same thing is here. If our relationship with Hashem is real and serious, well, we've achieved a real significant benchmark, a real success at Yom Kippur, but now we need to reestablish and set a new goal. And that new goal is to become closer to Hashem, or to even more perfect and refine our relationship. So that's how I explained that at the Fabring. I think it's along the lines of what we said yesterday, and I think that's what the previous rabbi was saying. So, Professor, my whole point really was to compliment you, and that your question was actually a question that was deeply considered by great Jewish thinkers that I'm aware of, and I'm sure there are others that have the same question. But sometimes people get insulted. They ask a question, say, "Oh, that's someone else's question." Oh, you mean my question wasn't original enough? But in a Jewish context, if the question we're asking is something that the great Jewish thinkers are considering, it probably means that it's a question that we can actually spin our wheels on for a little bit. And so that's my introductory Yasher Koyach to your question.
Rabbi,
yes.
one more second. I also thought about the professor's question, and the thing that I take from it is we say it in plural, slach lanu. So Hashem judges, Barchenu kolonu koechad. So it's not necessarily about you personally, but Am Yisrael in general. So thank you, Professor, for the question.
Good answer. So hold on, I want to think this through for a second. So you're saying maybe I am. Sorry, go ahead.
I think that Bernie's saying makes a lot of sense. Yes, it is in plural. And yes, we are responsible for each other.
Oh, so that's where I was heading. So Rebero says, listen, I'm perfect. My neighbor's not. So it's not a bracha levatala because there's still room for forgiveness among the Jewish people. But I think the professor added one key word, which is it's not just that I am perfect, my friend is not. If my friend is dealing with demons, if my friend is struggling, it's a little bit of an indictment on me too, because we need to be there for each other. And so if we're asking for atonement on behalf of our friend, it's not just our friend. There is a collective room for growth. And that perhaps is the next. We're talking about what's next. Well, now we need to look outward. Why are there other Jews that aren't? Why was there another Jew that wasn't by Ne'ilah? Why didn't they, or either literally or conceptually? Why are there people? And so that collective responsibility maybe translates to So
another point. When we do a Taras Nadarim, we do on the Nadarim we did, and we do on the future Nadarim. I mean, it's very simple. Don't make any more Nadarim or promises, but we know that human nature is such that we do. So here, Slach Lanu, it's already, we anticipate, which we shouldn't, but we anticipate we're going to do something wrong. So Slach Lanu for future, in addition to what we did already.
In preparation for Yom Kippur, I review different, try to get to. We have some rabbi forums, so we throw on some jokes or anecdotes or ideas. And so someone shared, I don't remember the whole joke, so I'm going to blow it up. But the essence of the joke was that the Galach needed a break, so he asked the rabbi if he'll take care of the confessions. And the first person comes, and I have a problem, whatever, sinning. And so the rabbi asked him, how frequently do you come for confession? So he said, well, I come every week. And he says, what does the priest tell you? The priest says you got to give $10 to the whatever, and say whatever. So he says, I have an idea. I'll sell you a coupon. I'll sell you coupons for the rest of the year. So you'll give me whatever, 6 months left, and I'll give you a discount. And so the priest comes back to his job and no one's shown up to confess. So he starts asking, he says, oh, the rabbi sold us. So anyways, that would be the right joke if we could figure it out for that Vart. But all right, let's share the screen and let's learn some Gemara. And so, although admittedly this discussion was off topic, I think it's another wonderful instance of the collaborative value of studying in a group setting and the ability to develop deep and meaningful ideas. One day we'll write a kovetz of the chidushim of our Gemara share. All right, so let me just refresh your memory. 2 days ago, no, not 2 days ago, prior to Yom Kippur, we had a machlokes, which really bore down to the essence of the laws of circumcision, of bris milah. The question was, being that the biblical origin for bris on the 8th day is a verse in Leviticus, in Parshas Tazria, first or second pasuk, Isha ki Tazria v'yolda zachar, a woman who gives birth, v'toma shivas yomim, she becomes ritually impure for 7 days. Uvayoim hashmini, on the 8th day, yimol b'sar lasei, they should circumcise the baby. The verse, for whatever reason, totally associates the mother's impurity and the child's circumcision on the 8th day. So Rav Asi says, well, it's hard to miss. Obviously, what's going on here is that if the mother follows this pattern of 7 days of impurity, so then the baby has a bris on the 8th day. But in the event that for whatever reason that is not the case, and Rashi and other commentaries found different scenarios where maybe there would be a little bit of an aberration or a change. Here, please don't mind the debris in our executive offices. Here, one second. Yveret, Shanata, Schoenberg, I have 2 lulav and esrog sets. Give one to Mrs. Rosman, just on the table right here. And Schoenberg, just show her how she should set it up on Sunday. Good Shabbos, sorry. So Rav Asi says, so if you have the criteria, if you have step 1, you have step 2. If you don't have step 1, well, then there's no reason to wait 8 days. You could have the bris right away, or some commentaries say it's not that it's dafke the first day, but it's not dafke the 8th day, maybe it's on the 9th day. This was a discussion of sages of the Gemara. Abaya disagrees and says, no way. We have to follow the consistent model of bris from the time of Avraham Avinu. Avraham Avinu already had a model of a bris on the 8th day, and there was no connection, there was no association between the mother's status and the baby. The reason why the pasuk is structured this way is because it's a common occurrence. We squeeze in two mitzvahs into one pasuk. Again, now I'm adding, but maybe and it's the normal course of events. So what we should scramble the chronology. We're going to talk about what happens on day 1, day 2, day 3, and then we'll talk about day 8. Machlokes of Amarayim, sages in the Gemara. So then the Gemara proposes that this is actually a machlokes tanoim, a machlokes in the Mishnah. Where do we see the machlokes? We quoted a brisa that talks about when one circumcises. Is the right word chattel? What do we say? What's the right word? Human. Help me out over here.
What are you trying to say?
Humans that are owned.
Chattel.
Chattel, right? So in the discussion of chattel, and again, it makes us feel uncomfortable, as we discussed, the similarities and differences between
Well, actually, chattel is more the animals that a person owns, but the slaves are considered as part of this. They were owned property, so I would.
Okay. So then we'll talk about. I was trying to find another word than slave, so I'm trying. Google tells us that chattel slavery is the most common form of slavery known to Americans, where humans were bought as legal property. So again, I don't know if that helps us or hurts us, but it is what it is. So we have a discussion about human slavery
That
And a
means,
baby,
Rabbi, that means that they forgot about slavery at the times of Rome, that they concentrate on American history and American guilt rather than on the whole course of history.
right? Because it doesn't help a narrative. So, anyways, but the point of the matter is that yes, humans have had slavery until the British canceled slavery, and eventually the Americans managed to abolish slavery with great sacrifice. And that's the point.
Slavery
that
exists today. Slavery is quite prominent
There's
today.
trafficking,
We don't
there's
hear much
slavery
about
today.
it.
Yeah. But anyways, the point is that a slave owned by a Jew is not just a slave. They are Jewish in many regards, and they can't be injured. And if they are injured in certain manners, the slave goes free. There are consequences for the owner of the slave, or if another person injures a slave, they could be punished equally. In Parshas Mishpatim, there is elaborate discussion in this regards. And they also, or in the process of becoming Jewish, because now they are a Jewish slave, they are to receive a circumcision. And we also uncovered, parenthetically, that a shivcha who is toveled l'shem conversion, she's toveled in the name of becoming now a Jewish slave. Well, she also follows laws of ritual purity and impurity. And so we find it in a potential analogy or a parallel between the debate of Rav Asi and Rabbiya to the Rav Chama and the Tanna Kama. Is a baby that's born before the mother goes to mikvah, so therefore the mother is not Jewish, the mother doesn't have ritual impurity. So is that baby's bris day 1 or day 8? If you say it's day 1, then you follow Rav Asi's opinion, or you reflect a commonality with Rav Asi's opinion. If you say day 8, well, then you reflect the opinion of Abaye. And that was essentially the entirety of yesterday's Gemara. The Gemara at the end, in the final moments, challenged the Tanna Kama. The Tanna Kama believes that you always give the bris on the 8th day, regardless of the mother's status. So you'll never have a scenario where a baby is actually has a bris on day 1. And the Gemara answers, let's read the words of the Gemara now. So again, the general purpose of our Gemara was to find a parallel between the debate about bris on day 1 or day 8 in the Amoraim and the Tanoim, and so we talk about the circumcising baby slaves. Again, with all the caveats and acknowledgments that sentence feels uncomfortable. Elo the Tanna Kama who says that even if the mother didn't go to mikveh, the baby gets a bris on day 8. There are 4 scenarios. A baby born in the household, it gets a bris on 1. A baby born in the household gets a bris on day 8. A baby that's purchased on day 1 and day 8. So bishlema kul mishkachaslu. 3 scenarios are found. Ella yilid bayis nimola echad. Where would you have a scenario where a baby that's born in the household gets a bris? And so the Gemara, and you remember we said this yesterday, the shivcha is purchased, but not for the ownership of the mother, purely for the possession of the babies. Even if this shivcha belongs to another Jew, so she actually has ritual impurity, but because the baby's purchased, therefore the bris has to be right away. That's what the Gemara says. Rashi, even if the mother is tamei, nonetheless, because the owner, the buyer, does not have rights to the mother, therefore the baby that's being born is given a bris right away. So the Gemara continues, and this is where we left off. And I told you that we're going to talk a little bit about a transactional conversation. And actually, Rashi makes my point even stronger and says like this. Well, let's read. This works if you are of the opinion that you buy an option on the future production. Does not mean that you've made an acquisition on what's currently in existence. In Rabbi Steinsaltz's words, let's see. This works out well according to the opinion of the one who says that a transaction to purchase an item for its product, you buy a tree, but not to own the tree, to own the oranges of that year. Or you buy a cow or a livestock, but only for its what's born from it. So to purchase something for its product is not a transaction to purchase the item itself. For example, if you purchase a field for its fruits, you didn't purchase the field. Now, I think the conversation is, what is the natural language? What are the natural consequences of contractual language? I think that's the Gemara's discussion. When I say I'm buying your tree for its fruits, am I actually buying the tree and its fruits? Or am I exclusively buying the rights to the future produce? So this is a debate and another Masechta that we'll discuss. There is an opinion that says when I say that I am purchasing the future produce, you are by definition purchasing the producer of the produce, a mother of a baby, a tree of fruits. So my ikal meimar, then why would the bris not be on day 8? This baby is being born to a mother who is a regular mother. You own the mother, you own the baby. If it's born into your household, the bris is on the 8th day. Amarav Mishashi Yosef. Mishashi has one scenario. We're like, hey, Achshivcha, Almanash Shaloi Lehitzbila. We're not talking about the scenario proposed where you didn't intend to buy the mother. It's a different scenario where the purchase of the mother was with the explicit condition that she is not going to become Jewish. And therefore, there are no mitzvahs. And there will never be mitzvahs regarding this person. Let us read Rabbi Steinsaltz. According to this opinion, it must be explained as referring to one who purchases a maidservant on the condition he will not have her immerse. They can stipulate that he will not have her immerse as a maidservant and she will remain a Gentile. In that case, the child is a slave born to a Jew, but the mother is not Jewish, and so therefore the circumcision must be right away. Rashi. So according to Rav, so the Tanakama would agree in a scenario where the mother is specifically and explicitly not going to be Jewish, then the bris would be done right away.
On a tangent.
Sorry?
I said on a tangent.
Go ahead.
If someone buys a shifcha for the specific purpose of having, declared purpose of having the baby from her, not really for her sake, and she aborts for one reason or another, is that considered a mekach taurus?
I'm sorry. Say that one more time. If you purchase, if the produce doesn't actually come forth,
right? Is that considered mekach taurus, and is the sale void? I mean, it's on the complete tangent. It's complete off the topic, but
I don't know, but I imagine that's probably the reason to buy it in such a way. It's like a speculation where you don't know exactly so there's probably a discount because of the speculation. But I'm not fresh in the Gemara and Baba Basra, so we'll have to go back and look there. It's a good question. But again, I think usually the point of speculation is you might get lucky or you might get not lucky. The markets might shift or maybe the fields won't produce. So but that's not an authoritative and final answer. That's just that's my musing at the moment. Okay, we're now going to shift to a new discussion. an interesting question that once again is going to compel us to consider the mortality and the odds of survival of a young baby. Tanya, a brisa taught as follows. Rabbi Shimon ben Gamliel Oimer. Rabbi Shimon ben Gamliel taught. I should say also, we're going to talk now about Pidyon Haben, which is the redeeming of the firstborn son after 30 days. And we're going to talk about the reason behind waiting 30 days. And when we understand the reason for waiting 30 days, we will present a challenge to the notion of a bris. If a baby survives, remains alive for 30 days, Adam, when it's a person, they will not be considered a stillborn. The presumption is they're going to survive. A baby surviving 30 days has a much better odds of surviving into adulthood than a baby before 30 days. It's probably true today, but thankfully today we have a lot of medical intervention. And so infant mortality is considerably, the risk of infant mortality is much lower and the odds of baby surviving, thankfully, are much higher. But until 30 days, there is a suspicion. Shenamar uftuyav miben chay, and there are other halachic. I'm sorry. There are halachic implications beyond our discussion. Other things, but let's take a look. Let's stay focused. But where do I know that a baby until 30 days is considered at risk, particular risk? Shenemar uf duyav miben chodesh tifta. Redeeming a baby occurs after a chodesh, after 30 days, or if you want to translate it precisely, uf duyav, its redemption is miben chodesh tifta. You should redeem a month old. And Rashi says we're talking about a baby human, a baby Jew. Shmoinas yomim b'behema. When it comes to an animal, after 8 days, eino noifel. It's not considered an unviable offspring. So an animal is less considered at risk. Maybe in halacha there's a little less of a concern, so we consider it generally viable. Professor?
Yes, I think I have a kind of general theoretical question about 8-month babies. That is, of course, we have some uncertainty about the conception date, but even we take it away, like in cases there was only one occurrence of sex or a narrow period of cohabitation. Even if we know the date of conception or a week of conception, how do we define 8 months? With the baby is born, it might be exactly 8 months, or it might be 7 months and 3 weeks, or it might be 8 weeks and 8 months, 2 weeks. How do we distinguish between 7 month, 8 month, and 9 month baby from the point of view of precision of the period? Let's say we know it's 8 months and 1 week. Is it an 8-month baby? Or if we know it is 8 months and 2 weeks, is it still 8-week baby? Do the rabbis talk about precision of definition?
So let me just interject.
I mean definition, not deciding about specific baby.
All right, so let me just make a general comment, which is I think you're wisely introducing the question of 8 month, 7 month, and 9 months here. But I believe that this discussion is regardless of that, meaning when a baby is born 8 months and you're asking how do we determine it, and I'm kind of sidestepping your whole question, which is very, very thoughtful and important. But just before that, there's the question. An 8-month-old baby is presumed to be really in trouble. A 9-month-old baby is considered healthy, and even a 7-month baby is considered healthy. But regardless of that whole discussion, there's a general angst. Maybe angst is the wrong word. There's a general probation. There's a general probation or waiting period where we don't know if this baby is going to survive. And that is regardless of when it was born. So even a baby that is born to term is also presumed at risk for 30 days. So I believe, and I may be wrong, or there's probably different opinions, but the simple reading of the Gemara and the way we're going to read the Gemara today is that this is regardless of if the baby was born prematurely or on time. No, there's always a certain risk and hazard that the baby experiences, and we're not able to take a real deep sigh of relief halachically until 30 days pass. So, Professor, I don't think I answered your question, but all I did is try to sever the two subjects for the purpose of our discussion. Now, the reason why I didn't fully answer your other question, which was very thoughtful and wise, is because I don't have the full answer. All I have for you is the Tosfos that we read together, which says that today, more generally, human biology works differently, and specifically, there's a lot of ambiguity about the way, the nature of periods and cycles and the ability to determine these things. And so halachically, we consider every baby viable to the extent that we'll intervene and not restrict any kind of handling. We'll judge the baby more by our assessment of their condition. That was, I hope I'm paraphrasing that Tosfos well. So that was the general. So that's why I'm kind of swatting away a very thoughtful and good question. But I want to suffice, with your permission, to just clarify that we're not connecting this conversation to that conversation. So regardless of 7, 8, or 9, or maybe it's not regardless, because I think we look at, or let me say one more sentence. An 8-month baby, a premature baby, is not a doubt. The presumption is the baby won't survive. Here, we're saying a healthy baby, we're hopeful they're going to survive. Their odds of survival are well. But there's still 30 days where if the baby dies, we'll say, oh, that baby was born with some kind of problem we didn't identify, and the baby really never was viable. That's the idea. And so even a healthy baby for 30 days, we are not certain. Now, this is a conversation about Pidyon Haben. But this introduces a very interesting question about bris. Holaisha, if the baby is not yet alive for 30 days, Sfeika Hava, there is a doubt about the baby's viability. Mimhal Hechimal Linonle. How are we allowed to circumcise this baby? What's the question? Rashi says, Shum Katan b'yom hashmini b'Shabbos. How can we ever administer a bris to a baby on Shabbos? There's a small but reasonable chance maybe this baby is not really viable. Maybe there's some underlying condition the baby won't survive to 30 days. And if the baby is not viable, if the baby is not going to survive, you'd retroactively, the baby would not warrant a bris. And now you've done the bris anyways where it's not warranted, and it's Chilul Shabbos. You've desecrated Shabbos. Again, if you know the baby wouldn't survive, and again, we're not saying that the circumcision contributes to the baby's passing. We're saying the baby has some other kind of terrible underlying condition that would make the baby die. The bris doesn't expedite or make it happen, but just doing melacha on a non-viable baby should not be allowed. Professor, I should point out for you that this Rashi says shum katan, any baby. Other commentaries understand this Gemara a little differently. And really, me introducing not just going to confuse things, but I want to give a hat tip. Yeah, Tosfos, Professor, more or less makes exactly your point. or not your point. It makes my point, which was only possible to be brought up because of your question. So basically, Tosfos asks your question, but without saying those words, gives the answer. Mikan mashma. I want to just read a few lines to give you the hat tip here again. From here, we can infer. He's not talking about an 8-month-old baby, which of course we would agree you shouldn't give a bris because that baby is under such jeopardy. We're talking about any baby. And similarly, from the later dialogue, we're going to make the same inference. Anyways, and then Tosfos further brings logical proofs that it must be his interpretation. So how would I understand? So here is one of the interesting challenges of learning Gemara, and particularly learning Rashi and sometimes Tosfos, Rashi even more, is that many times the Gemara has a big question. It's such a big question, Rashi assumes you have the question. He doesn't say the question, he just gives the answer. Or Tosfos assumes that you understand the big question, and so he goes straight to the answer. And that's kind of what happened over here. Mikan Mashmi goes straight into the answer. Obviously, we're talking about it, but we're not talking about it. Shemaina, we're talking about all babies. But the fact that he's acknowledging the question already tells us it's a good question and gives us a clue that likely there are others who actually disagree and believe it is talking specifically about a 8-month-old baby. So here's the Gemara's answer. The Gemara asked a good question. If every baby is being watched extra carefully because there is a serious chance that this baby is not going to survive. Halachically, the baby is considered the baby's viability is considered doubtful under the eyes of Jewish law. If that's the case, you should not be allowed to administer a bris on Shabbos. Not that you shouldn't be allowed to administer a bris anyways, because the baby's fatality will not be linked to the bris. But the act of circumcision, when not needed, not warranted, because the baby is a nafel, the baby is not going to survive 30 days, retroactively, the baby never should have had a bris. And so you're doing a suffix melacha on Shabbos. Because if the baby doesn't really need the bris, then when you've done on Shabbos is not a mitzvah, it's a melacha, it's desecrating Shabbos. So one of our favorite mohalim is going to give us the answer. Remember, I think we said Rav Ada bar Ava. Was that the one with the story? Where he circumcised the son after 13 mohalim said no on Shabbos? I think that was the one. And so now we know that he was a moil, so it's not surprising that he would weigh in on the subject of bris. We give the bris because we use the following logic. No matter how you slice it, you should do a bris. Dr. Stamler or Mark. Is Mark there? It's Erev Shabbos. How do you translate mimon afshach?
Either way.
Either way. Mimon afshach, although it's not really Hebrew, it's more Aramaic, but it appears in a modern Hebrew, certainly in a yeshiva, in a somewhat yeshiva or Torah-oriented crowd, you could use the word mimon afshach in Hebrew, right?
Yeah. But also another way of saying it could be ech shelo yeh.
Ech shelo yeh. Regardless, no matter how things fall, no matter what happens, it is reasonable to give a bris. Ech shelo yeh. Regardless, either way. Im chayu, if the baby ultimately proves to be viable, shaper kamahel, you've done the right thing by giving a viable baby a bris. Rashi im chayu. Klamar im kalalei chadash, once the baby lives out a month, 30 days, shaper kamahel. What you've done is correct. The im lav, this is a little bit, what's the word? Clinical. The im lav, if the baby does not prove to be viable, what you've done is mechatech basar. You've cut flesh of something that really is almost not alive. Because being that the baby is just waiting to die, and again, this has to be heard purely in clinical logic and not with the emotions, because that's a very horrific thing to really envision. But halachically, you're allowed to cut meat. You're allowed to cut flesh of a not living being. If the baby dies before 30 days, Retroactively, what we're really discovering is this baby was never viable. And he was just bound to die. I'm going to read Rabbi Steinsaltz. I'm hoping he'll give us some more sensitive and delicate words. If someone were to join the Gemara here for the first time at this line, I'm not sure if they would be inclined to continue. But again, we're talking in a pure logic. It's like, God forbid, I think this is the visual that Rashi is going for. Again, very painful, that if you shecht an animal, there is a window of time where the animal presents in many senses like a living being, even though it has already been shechted. But they've been mortally wounded and they're not really alive. It's just nerves and whatever. And so God forbid a baby who's born with an internal defect that's going to lead it to expire. It's not going to allow the baby to live out 30 days. Already now, retroactively, the baby is really not halachically alive in the most literal sense. And so Rav Adda Brava says, either way, the circumcision is warranted on Shabbos. Let's now read Rabbi Steinsaltz in hopes that maybe he'll give us some more delicate language. If he is a child who will live, the mohel may well circumcise the child. If not, if the child is, see, here's what happens. If a baby doesn't live 30 days, in the eyes of halacha, it was always a stillborn. Again, it's not perfect because I think in English, the word stillborn means it was born like that. But the Hebrew word for nofel, or at least the halachic word for nofel, can extend even the baby's born, but ultimately doesn't live out 30 days. It's like the stillborn was born before that event happened. Again, painful when we consider it emotionally, but this is the clinical halachic legal view here. So then the baby is considered as if he's never really alive. The circumciser is merely cutting flesh. And one who cuts the flesh of a corpse or the flesh of one who has legal status of a corpse is not considered to have made a wound and therefore has not performed the prohibited labor. So mimanashach, if the baby is going to live, then you did a good bris. And if the baby is not going to live, you didn't do a malacha.
Rabbi.
Yes.
Why would it be that the diagnosis, so to speak, is left to the rabbis? When we had things like amulets, it said seek out somebody who's an expert, who has knowledge. Why is there no such thing involved here?
The diagnosis is not left to the rabbis, but the halachic status is left to halacha. And so, of course, this baby should be afforded all treatment and care.
No, I'm just thinking midwives, etc., would know better.
Well, why are you assuming that a midwife is not involved in the conversation?
No, I know.
When it comes to medical care, there's a midwife involved. When it comes to a purely halachic question, the midwife or the mohel is going to ask the halacha. Again, we're not saying that you should go against medical advice here. That's not what we're saying. What we're saying here is that a baby could be born and live to the 8th day, and it looks like a live, vibrant baby. Top score in the APGAR. But if we were prophets, we would know that unfortunately this baby has some kind of internal defect that's going to cause the baby is absolutely not viable. So therefore there is a hypothetical halachic question, which is we don't know if the baby is going to survive, and we do not have the capacity to do a CAT scan or MRI or whatever on this baby. We do not know, and we will not know, and we cannot know. But being that there is a small but not insignificant chance the baby doesn't survive, and this is, again, realize this was the fact of life in those days. It was a fact of life that a certain percentage of babies just did not survive past 30 days, just as a certain number of babies, unfortunately, either are miscarriages or stillborn. And again, this is an incredibly emotionally painful and fraught discussion. But right now, the Gemara is not talking about the emotions of it. The Gemara is talking that this is a legal discussion. And we need to know the halacha. And so, where medical capacity to intervene ends, and overlaid on that is a halachic question of, do we give a bris? Now, this was all a theoretic question that already has the answer. So we never actually didn't circumcise the baby. Being that there's a chance the baby is not going to survive, can we be culpable for circumcising a baby who might not survive? And the Gemara answers no. Because hopefully the baby survives and all is good. And if the baby doesn't survive, it wasn't considered a malacha. We'll only know those facts retroactively, but we can, because we could say Miman Avshach, therefore we do the bris. I hope I answered the question. But if I didn't answer the question, the bottom line is here, halacha is not giving a medical opinion. Halacha is giving a halachic opinion. And halacha is very much entitled to give a halachic opinion. I believe. Rebel, do you agree with me or do you disagree? Or are the worms still all over
No,
the table?
I just would be more satisfied if somewhere along the way there was mention that some expert before has concluded.
What do you want the expert to say?
I think, Rabbi, I think the Rabbanim, they make an halachic decision based on medical facts. For instance, if in my field, I can give a Rav the clinical facts, but I'm not versed in the halachic issues involved. So I would present the medical facts or the dental facts, and the Rav, I would expect the Rav to take his expertise and deduce an halachic end result.
Exactly, Menachem. I'm looking at the opposite. We're having all these halachic discussions without one word of some outside source bringing the suffix to them.
No, but I think when it comes to the Gemara, you're talking about not a specific immediate case. You're talking about things that happen on a regular basis. And the Rabbanim have already experienced these issues previously. And that's is what they base it about.
Beryl, I want you to tell us, where do you want the midwife to weigh in? At which part of this theoretical discussion about a known and observable medical phenomenon should the midwife weigh in?
Same place as where we had a discussion about amulets. Before you buy, before you do, make sure the person knows.
Explain to me, if we're gonna, Beryl, we're gonna create a revised Talmud. Where does the midwife weigh in? If we could go into a time machine and travel back and talk to Rav Adam or Ava and the rabbis that are conversing, and we're saying, listen, I have a suggestion. Add 3 words and we'll feel much better in 2023. I'm not belittling. I just want to understand. So where would we quote the midwife?
No.
By the way, Beryl, the
Yes.
example that you give with the amulets, the advice in that case is to the lay person. If you're going to go buy an amulet, go and check first with a mumche, with an expert about amulets. But here we're not discussing a lay person. We're discussing Rabbanim who know.
But let me
the halachic.
And let me add a sentence. Rebel, if the question was, can a baby who's not necessarily well get a bris? So then the answer, of course, is you need medical advice. That's why when halacha talks about fasting or halacha directly or breaking a fast, halacha directly talks about a doctor. Because there we're talking to a specific scenario where there are knowable facts and only a doctor can weigh in. But here we're talking about like a global human phenomenon, which is that a certain percentage of babies don't survive. Halachically, how can we give a bris to a baby if there's a chance the baby won't survive? And for that halachic question, we give a halachic answer. Now, if there was a presumption or if there was an assumption that the Mila would impact the baby's viability, well, again, that's where the doctor comes in. But right now, we're not talking about that. We're talking about a purely hypothetical question. We know that a certain number of healthy babies don't survive. And in the eyes of halacha, they're considered a nafel. They're considered like they're predetermined to die. How can you give them a bris? So it's a purely hypothetical halachic question based on observable facts. There is no room for a physician to weigh in over here beyond what's already been established generally by physician. So do we want us to say Dr. X has taken a survey and confirmed that a certain percentage of babies don't survive? That was in those days already a fact. It was a fact of life. So again, wherever there is a certain variability in a case-to-case decision, there must be a doctor or medical or best medical advice. When we're asking a global question based on observable phenomena, I don't think, and I'm open to revising my impression, I don't think there really is room right now for a doctor. And the Gemara and Halacha is pretty comfortable introducing professionals and experts when that's actually the case. I'll give you another. Well, no, there are many, many scenarios. If you want to ask me privately, I can give you an additional scenarios where basically whenever it has to do with a specific individual and a biological system, medical advice is necessary. So in the laws of Nida, laws of Mikvah, in the laws of fasting on Yom Kippur, in the laws of what else? I think those are the big ones. But if you could think of others, so then we talk about a doctor. Here, I just happen not to know where the doctor's voice would come in beyond a general. I think more what happened is the rabbis opened up all the medical texts and they understood that there was a certain prevailing phenomenon, and I don't think we needed to quote that. It was such a fact. Today, maybe things are different. And so we might revise our medical assessment of viability, or based on medical means, we might revise our assessment, but that wouldn't change this discussion, I don't think. Reb Beryl, have we put most of the worms back in the can, or is there still a worm?
Fine. It's fine.
Okay, shkach. No, but I thank you for the question, because sometimes if you don't consider the question, you're not going to have clarity on the whole topic. So let's see. Here is the answer. Okay, now we're going to reintroduce the professor's question. Didn't we talk about Safik ben Shiva? Safik ben Shmoina ein mechal and all of us a Shabbos. If we're doubtful about the baby's viability, you might not be allowed to be mechal Shabbos. So we have a doubt here. You shouldn't be allowed to be mechal Shabbos either. Why do we say there ein mechalin? Over there too, nimalim imanavshach. Give the baby a bris. Basically, we had another scenario where we said we didn't know the viability of the baby. This was a more solid suffix, and there we said don't do a bris. I'll explain to you what this Gemara is saying. Mimhal. You know what? We actually say you do give the baby a bris. The statement here which says that we don't do a bris on a suffix because maybe the baby's not viable, it actually means that we don't do malacha for the hechsher mitzvah. This follows the opinion of Rabbi Elazar. I think we need to stop over here, even though this last line is going to leave us a little confused, and so I think we need to spend a little more time. So let's talk about the schedule. First of all, Bli Neder, Dr. Pasternak, I'll bring by the lulav today, and Professor Stern also Bli Neder, I'll try to drop it off. Schedule. Sunday, there's no shir ever. Sunday. Monday, Tuesday is Yontif. Let's have a tentative Wednesday shir. It's going to be a trial, and I'll tell you why. I don't know exactly the davening schedule. We're going to have a longer davening, but a faster chazan. So I'm hoping that it's all going to work out. So let's schedule. First day of Chol Hamoed, we'll have a shir, but it's going to be a little bit of a trial. If the circumstances are too chaotic, then
let's call it a suffix.
Do we circumcise this year?
Why don't we try for 10 o'clock instead of 9:30 to have less pressure on Wednesday?
No, a time is a time. A time
Rabbi,
is a time.
also one thing, you got to have the class in the sukkah.
No, I'll be here 9:30. I'm just saying we'll use it as a test. What are you saying?
You have to have a class in the sukkah.
We'll see. I don't know if the internet works well enough in the sukkah.
Oh, okay.
So anyway, so that's the schedule. So again, Monday, Tuesday, no. Wednesday, Bli Neder, we'll try, and then depending on how that works, we'll determine for Thursday and Friday. I'm hopeful we'll be able to do it because there's nothing better than learning Gemara. And I want to thank you all for being here. I want to wish everyone a good Shabbos.
So are you going to text us Wednesday morning whether there is one or there isn't one?
No, Wednesday we're going to learn. If it's too
I know,
Send
chaotic.
us a message. Just send us a message when to come on.
No, we're going to aim for 9:30. And then depending on how chaotic it is, we're going to do it. But then we'll determine for the coming days. Anyways, I want to wish everyone a good Shabbos and a good Yontif. And I want to thank you all for ushering in the new year, full of Gemara and full of vigorous discussion, debate, and the cross-pollination of ideas. Can't think of a better way to start the year. And I want to wish everyone to be truly blessed. And we should have the koyach to continue in good health, in good circumstances, to continue to study. And you know what? It's a new year. If anybody has a friend that they think might be a good candidate to join, we'll allow them to appear before the selection committee,
the admissions
committee, and if they pass all of the, and you know, there may be a few professions that would also be a good addition. So if anybody knows someone, you're welcome to over Yontif, over Sukkot, or whatever, we can recruit new members. And as long as they don't mind vigorous discussion, disagreement, and an occasional meandering from the essence of the Talmud, then they are welcome. So anyways, have a wonderful day, Yasher Koyach, and look forward to seeing everyone on Wednesday, Be'ezer Hashem.
Shalom, Pax Leia.
Take care.
Shabbos, good Yontif.